And still in the country, South Africa, of course, Democratic Alliance Shadow Agriculture Minister Noko Masipa has called on the South African government to provide assistance to poultry farmers and businesses affected by the outbreak. The poultry industry is calling on the government to help farmers and businesses affected by the ongoing avian flu outbreak. South Africa is currently experiencing a shortage in poultry and egg supplies over what's been described as the biggest outbreak in South Africa. Poultry producers are recording huge financial losses. Masipa specifically called for help in procuring and registering vaccines effective against avian influenza, which is currently causing significant damage in South Africa. And now to talk about this, I'm being joined by Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and also Member of Parliament, Noko Masipa, on these, to have more perspective on these. Good afternoon, Noko.
Good afternoon, ma'am, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Fantastic. Glad to have you join me.
Thanks for inviting me.
Okay. Now let's talk about this case happening in this region. What a massive impact, not only on farmers but also on the consumers. What kind of impact are we yet to see regarding these?
Yeah. So far, really, we have seen quite a lot of culling taking place in many areas. Especially the epicenter now here is Gauteng, where the most culling really took place as a result of this avian influenza. And obviously, the impact is going to be shortage of food, And as you know, that chicken is the most consumed protein meat by many of the South Africans. So the impact will definitely be huge. And if you think of it, in Easter holidays, people are going to places like Moria, ZCC, gather. And basically, chicken is in high demand in terms of those particular gatherings. And yes, the impact can be really huge. But I think the sector is working quite heavily with the government to ensure that vaccines are procured, and secondly, that they are able to import the eggs for the replacement of the broiler breeders. Where in Gauteng, in one of the areas that we have visited, the broiler breeders was wiped out completely, so they've stopped their operation. They are not operating at all.
Okay, let me just chip in there, Mr. Masipa. So when you call for government intervention, for instance, you talked about assistance and help. What exactly are you looking at, and how can the government specifically help businesses who are in dire need?
Yeah. So really, I mean, the legislation really allows that when farmers such as the broiler chickens that are really being affected by this outbreak of the avian influenza have to cull, they can really seek assistance from the government. Like what happens during drought, they can seek assistance from government, but government has to first declare disaster to release the funding support to the farmers. So in this case, we have asked the government to consider a poultry rescue fund, whereby they can really assist these farmers really to start their business going forward. And the other impact that obviously that I did not really touch, as you would know, that many of the informal traders are also using chicken, as one of the chicken meat is one of the most selling. If you go to informal traders, you'll find that most of them are trading with chicken. But the most important thing is that the discovery that I have just come across is that 30% actually, are trading informally through, acquiring these chicks from some of these farmers. So it is definitely very important that we address this issue and we make sure that, we bring back our farming community, to continue farming and address our food security.
Okay, Noko, let's talk about the consumers for a bit. Now, we've talked about the farmers and what help they need. Now, let's talk about the consumers themselves. What impact do you think this would have on ordinary South Africans who rely on chicken and eggs?
Yeah. Look, South Africa is not food insecure as such, and that's one point. But the other point that we got to make is that South Africa, while it's not food insecure, South Africa's biggest challenge is accessibility to food. So many of South Africans are really going to bed hungry, as a result of the inaccessibility to food. And you think of it, 350. What would you achieve with 350 if you get that as a particular grant? So yes, many South Africans are vulnerable, but chicken is still the cheapest meat that you can find on the shelf. And obviously, as you said, eggs are also, cheaper for many households, that are able really to buy eggs and feed themselves. So yes, the challenge is on the consumers side as well. Hence we are saying that government support these farmers, because ultimately when these farmers are supported, you are supporting the livelihoods, you are supporting the employment, you are also ultimately making sure that it's cheaper for obviously the consumers to buy cheaper meat as such, because many people cannot afford really to go to let's say the ShopRite or the Woolworths as such, but they are able to buy through the informal sectors. That's where really they make they find that they are able to support their livelihood and their lives at home.
Now, Noko, this avian flu seems to be a recurring decimal. This is a third outbreak since 2017 in South Africa. I'm wondering, is the government or animal health in that country doing, in South Africa, doing anything at all to help nip these in the bud?
Yeah. So what happened, as you said, that this outbreak, the worst was in 2017, yes. And at that time, when the farmers were asked to cull their beds, they actually asked compensation, which government obviously did not really support them with the compensation. But also, one of the other requests that they made during that time was that they requested to have vaccines in order so that they can be able to vaccinate their chicks. The government was reluctant to actually allow the farmers, to allow farmers to vaccinate. So now we're back to square one. Farmers are appealing to government to allow them to vaccinate. So the only way, obviously, is the way out of this problem is vaccinate. But we are not saying, and the farmers are not saying they want to, make this age 7 and 6 endemic, or vaccinate to make the disease endemic. They will vaccinate as an emergency measure to ensure that they are able to carry on with their business instead of making these huge losses. So there is a discussion going on with the government. We had them in our portfolio committee meeting. They were not convincing, but we are pushing them from our side as the Democratic Alliance. We are pushing them to request that they allow the vaccination to take place. So there are processes, obviously, in terms of acquiring the vaccines. They need to register, Section 21 and Section 36. I might not be able to elaborate how those processes really needs to take place. They are very technical. But the fact of the matter is there are obviously vaccines that are lined up that can be bought, and there are also vaccines that is being developed in the country as well, which, if registered speedily, should be available from November onwards.
Right. I must sincerely thank you for your insights this afternoon. Noko Masipa, thank you so much. DA Shadow Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and also a Member of Parliament. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for hosting me.